Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Pod.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. It is week 9 beginning tonight. Houston Texans, Coach Tyler's coaching questions, taking on the New York Jets in an epic battle this week, starting off us on Thursday Night Football. Of course, Coach Tyler is on today's show. What's going on, Coach Tyler?
What's up, guys? Yeah, super excited for Thursday night. We'll see what happens.
Hopefully you guys pull out a win because I do not like the Jets, so that's all good. So hopefully the Texans win. But we have a lot to go over tonight, guys. Obviously, it's week 9. It's our start and sit show. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this new sort of format that we have. Once again, I've been tweaking with it. I kind of like the new one here now. So let's kind of get right into it because we have a lot to cover tonight. So starting us off at the top here, Dallas Cowboys, Atlanta Falcons, a lot of players, a lot of upside here for fantasy football here. Hello, Albert. How are you? A lot of things going on here. I'm going to read through a couple real quick, and then Coach Tyler's going to kind of break down some of the more intriguing matchups here. So obviously, you're looking at quarterbacks, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, both considered QB1s this week. You should consider them as starts. Just like the tight ends, Jake Ferguson, Kyle Pitts, both really good tight ends to play for us in this matchup here. You're looking at CeeDee Lamb, Drake London, good wide receiver ones for fantasy football. But let's get into some of the running backs here. You obviously want to start Bijan Robinson, but Rico Dowling, missed last week due to being sick. But again, he was doing pretty good up until the Cowboys bye week. But coming into this matchup here, Coach Tyler, do you kind of turn back to Rico if obviously he's not sick anymore? Do you like him as a potential option for an RB this week?
I don't hate him. We have only really seen a couple double-digit fantasy point weeks out of him in a full PPR league, before the bye, before the injury. But he's just sitting down there at that low-end RB2, high-end RB3 range. And kind of like we talked about on Monday, this Cowboys team is just searching for answers, especially with, the entire team trying to figure out what's going on. We've talked about Zeke, kind of his wheels if they haven't started to fall off, or if they haven't fallen off, they're starting to fall off. And then we saw Dalvin Cook for the first time this season. But Dowdle has been a consistent, low-end RB2, very high-end RB3 for you. So I like where you put him with the flex and PPR spot. That's, he's had multiple games of over 5 targets. And I like him. I'm not overly excited to play him just because we don't know what this game could look like for a Cowboys offense that has been struggling. But at the same time, he has been consistent enough in his health that if he's fully healthy, I feel confident starting him.
Yeah, that's fair. And the way I kind of put it, that, like you mentioned, I like him better in PPR leagues at the pass catching role in the offense. Falcons do have a really strong run defense. I'm hoping that he does see targets. I think that's what was missing from their game this past week with the 49ers, that they didn't really have a trusted player in the backfield to kind of dump the ball off to. Zeke's a little old. That's why he's a sit this week. Dalvin Cook's coming into his first game with the Cowboys last week. Rico really needs to be there for the Cowboys to have a shot at competing against the Falcons. And again, like I said, Bijan's an RB1. You're looking at Tyler Allgeier's a desperate RB3. Darnell Mooney's a flex. Jalen Tolbert's a risky flex. Raymond McLeod's a deep league flex. So this game has a lot of potential for a shootout and a lot of good players to help us out with this week in fantasy. So, all right, over to the next game here, the Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills here. So, Coach Shaw, I'm going to switch it up this time here. Let you kind of go first. Talk about Jalen Waddle. Obviously, not the best last week. Obviously, Miami kind of fell below expectation with Tua coming back, but obviously there's hope for the future. But in this matchup against the Bills here, last time Tua played was against the Bills, so I'm not liking that. But do you like Waddle? Do you trust starting Waddle this week in fantasy?
I really don't. Obviously, a lot of the stats that we have from Waddle this year are without Tua. But even with Tua, we see a 5 for 109, and then the game where Tua gets hurt against Buffalo, we see 4 for 41. We know that Jalen Waddle is undoubtedly the wide receiver 2 on this team. There's very few weeks that he's going to outshine Tyreek Hill. And I feel like with how Tua has had to handle his injury, sort of the concerns behind the concussions and all the brain things going on up there, I'm not overly confident in starting Waddle. Now, that's not to say that the Dolphins can't go out there and just light up the scoreboard and put up 50-something points and Waddle could have a good week. But I like how you put risky flex because we've seen him, put up that week 1 with his 5 for 109. He could get 1 or 2 long receptions and really make a week for himself in your flex spot. But at the same time, he could be, the last game that he played with Tua against Buffalo was 8.5 points. Last week was 8.5 points with Tua. So hopefully that's not the trend of just an 8.5 point week for him. But at the same time, we know that he's not going to supersede Tyreek Hill for that wide receiver 1 spot. And so, yeah, I like where you put him at risky flex. I'm not overly confident in starting him, but you also may not have too many other options at this point in the season with injuries and just roster construction.
That's fair. Maybe do have a question in the chat here. Good evening. Would you guys trade Dave Montgomery, Mike Evans for Saquon, or am I paying too much?
I don't know how to feel about that because I feel like he's been having a really good year. He's not a good year. He's not having a Saquon year, but
I would say no. I understand that Saquon has a really good schedule down the stretch here, and I get that. But Dave Montgomery and this Lions team, they're going to continue to dominate on the offensive side of the ball here. And Dave Montgomery is going to have plenty of opportunities week in and week out to score touchdowns. They're going to get within the 10 and they're going to run the ball. They're not throwing the ball inside the 10. They love to run the ball. And then eventually you get Mike Evans back. Now, if you're looking to consolidate, and we don't, your roster as a whole might change my answer a little bit. And if you think you have enough, you don't really care about depth, maybe it's a 10-man league and you just want to get Saquon, then go for it. But if it's like a 12 or a 13 or 14, I might hold back and not make this trade personally, because I think Montgomery has been doing enough to kind of keep you really strong at your RB2, and Mike Evans hopefully will be back and healthy and will dominate targets without Chris Godwin.
Yeah, and we look at Evans' schedule down the stretch. It's a really good schedule. Coming out of the bye, those crunch weeks to get into the playoffs, weeks 12 and 13, you've got the Giants in Carolina, and then Vegas week 14. And then he goes Chargers, Dallas, and then if you make it to your championship in week 17, Carolina again. So if he's healthy by the bye, this Bucs team, we saw it this past week. They're not going to stop throwing the ball no matter how many receivers they lose. And so once they get Mike Evans back, a lot of that is going to be funneled back into him. Obviously the hamstring isn't ideal. I think it might be until the bye week that we see him. So if you're in a position where you're really scrambling to,
So it's a 14-man league. So
yeah,
I doesn't trust Evans.
I feel like if he's coming back healthy by the bye, that I'm confident enough in keeping Montgomery and Evans. I know they said 4 weeks, and that included this past week. And so if we can get
the bye in there somewhere too. So
yeah, if we can get to the bye, then I think you're good. If you're worried about making playoffs, then possibly.
If you like this trade personally, if you think you like this trade, and if it's the only thing's holding you back is think you're paying too much, I don't think you're paying too much. If that makes sense. I think the value leans towards the players you're giving away slightly, but you're getting a player who is going to dominate the rest of the year. You don't have to worry about if Gibbs is going to take away from Montgomery, and you don't have to worry about the health of Evans. If you feel the health of Evans is concerning you for your fantasy team, then I understand that. I'm okay with it. So, but I'd rather keep the 2 players, but I understand that health is a concern for you, and some people don't like having injured players throughout the season. So it's not you're not overpaying too much. If you want to make this trade, I don't think you're overpaying. All right, back to the Dolphins-Bills game here. Like I said, Tua is a better QB2 in the super flex leagues. You got Josh Allen's QB1. You want to start A-Chain, James Cook as RB1s for this matchup here. Most of it becomes a little more risky RB3. Ray Davis becomes a little bit more of a desperate RB3. Tight ends, I'm not really thrilled with the tight end. Like Jonah Smith's tight end to Dalton Kincaid's I feel like he's just kind of a low-end tight end one. I don't think there's upside in this matchup. Shakir is a solid flex. Coleman's an upside wide receiver 4 flex. What about Amari Cooper, real quick, before we move on here, Coach Tyler? Again, great week 1. Week 2 with the Bills now wasn't so good. Are you going back to him in lineups this week as a flex option at least, or
Yeah, I like him as a flex option. We're trying to figure out what this Bills team is going to do offensively because we think that they're going to run the ball, and then the next week Josh Allen just throws like crazy. And we think they're going to throw the ball, and they just keep flipping back and forth. But yeah, 2 weeks integrated into this offense. Obviously, Seattle's secondary isn't one to kind of turn your nose up at, and I think that Miami's secondary might be a little bit more exploitable for the Bills, and so I'd honestly put Cooper in that wide receiver 4 risky flex spot, almost where Jalen Waddle is for me, just because he's so good of a receiver playing with so good of a quarterback that in my mind it makes sense that it works, especially in his 3rd week with this offense. So I feel confident enough to put him in that flex-ish area.
That's fair. I'm a little more torn on Cooper this week here. Miami does have a really good, no, I don't say it's really good secondary. I mean, I think they've been tested enough to show that they could be beat, but I'm concerned that Shakir and Coleman are rising because of Cooper, and they're leaning towards them and not worrying about defenses are focused on Cooper, allowing Shakir and Coleman to kind of work. So I'm kind of concerned about that, but I'd probably avoid him personally. That's how I feel. So I got to go to the next page here. All right. Next one up here, Raiders, Bengals. Starting off at the top, biggest question here I'd like to bring up this week here is, let's see, where do I want to start here? That's a good question. T. Higgins and Mike Gesicki. Higgins is injured. He may not play this week, but if he plays, are you playing him? And if, he doesn't play, does Mike Gesicki become somewhat of a tight end option for you this week that you like?
If T plays, I feel like you have to play him. If T plays, you have to play him. I feel like the Bengals run game, they're still, jumping between Chase Brown, Zach Moss. One of them's getting more rush attempts. One of them's getting more snaps, all this kind of stuff. But this is a team that wants to throw the ball. And T. Higgins has had multiple, wide receiver 1 weeks this year. So if T plays and there's no chance that he's going to sit out or be one of those, because I feel like it was a year or 2 ago that I had T. Higgins on a team and he was hurt all week, and then they said he was going to play, and then he didn't touch the field. But so it may be one of those. But if there's no hint of that, if there's no possibility of that, I start T. I do like Gesicki a little bit if T doesn't play. Obviously we saw a real good week last week from him, 7 for 73. Obviously, National Tight End Day. It happens. But Gesicki has put up multiple tight end 1 weeks this year, and he hasn't had a receiving touchdown all season. And so if he's getting the target share to do that, it's not a week in, week out basis, but if he's getting the target share to put up wide receiver 1 weeks, in those weeks we're seeing 5 and 9 targets. And then even this past week, he was tight end 15 because every tight end decided to have a good day.
That's true.
But he still had 8 targets in the week. So if T is out, I think Burrow is starting to trust Gesicki more. And if he could fall into the end zone, that does nothing but help his case, because if we're seeing multiple tight end 1 weeks on just receptions and receiving yards, a fall into the end zone, getting across that goal line does so much more for his week and his production.
Yeah, I guess would be nice if he had that touchdown. We all need that. Just kind of going over the rest real quick here. Looking at the quarterbacks, Minshew, more of a QB3, but there's some upside there. Bengals have been bad against quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, the Raiders actually have been good against quarterbacks this year. So, I think I might have just lowered my expectation for Joe Burrow just a slight bit. The running backs, Madison's a good RB3 for you. Chase Brown has some upside as an RB2. And I think they can work in some Zach Moss in there as well. But I think this is more of a Chase Brown week, while last week was more of a Zach Moss week. Jamar Chase is a wide receiver 1. Brock Bowers is a tight end 1. Jacoby Myers is a good flex option for you to have. Trey Tucker, wide receiver 5. He'd likely need a touchdown to be productive for fantasy. So, all right, over to the next game here. We have the Los Angeles Chargers and the Cleveland Browns. Biggest question of this game here. Let's take a look. Who do you trust more running back this week, Nick Chubb or J.K. Dobbins? Both having somewhat of a tough matchup, but both kind of the same player, to be honest.
Yeah. I honestly want to go Dobbins. I feel like Dobbins has just done more this season. Obviously, Nick Chubb is just coming back. But Dobbins has been consistently at least an RB2. A couple RB3 weeks thrown in there. But, we had the crazy start to the season, and then 2 of the last 3 weeks he's been an RB14. He's been the RB14 on the week. And so we're seeing enough production out of him and enough of this offense running through him that I feel more confident playing Dobbins than Nick Chubb. Obviously, if Justin Herbert somehow figures out how to throw the ball to all these abysmal receivers outside of Vlad McConkey, then that might become another story. But JK's gotten enough work. We saw 7 targets this past week too, so there's a chance he gets integrated more in a receiving role that I feel more comfortable playing him than Chubb.
That's fair. I kind of lean towards Dobbins myself too as well. I just feel like they still want to commit to running the ball, while Cleveland doesn't really want to run the ball as much. You're looking at Nick Chubb, seeing, a decent workload coming back. Jerome Ford's hurt, and there's a chance that he doesn't play in this game again. But Dobbins has seen a giant workload in this offense this year, and I don't expect it to change. But with Winston and Nick Chubb, I feel like they're going to focus more towards passing the ball a little bit there. Both quarterbacks are QB2s. I think I trust Jameis Winston a little bit more. Just because of his ability to air the ball downfield. David Njoku's a tight end 1. Will Disley's had a great week last week. Low end tight end 2. Vlad McConkey, he's banged up too, but if he plays, wide receiver 3 flex, been pretty good at that. Josh Palmer, wide receiver 4. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 4. Elijah Moore, wide receiver 5. Cedric Tillman is probably an interesting one. A lot of people are going to want to know. Coach Tyler, back-to-back great weeks. Chargers secondary has been pretty good. I have him as like a risky wide receiver 3 this week. How do you feel about Tillman?
Yeah, I honestly kind of want to solidify him as a wide receiver 3. Not even the risky. I feel confident that J-Lo is going to find him at some point. Yeah, I like Tillman. We talked about him Monday. If he's somehow still available in your league, even after waivers have run, you're either in the tiniest league in the world or people just aren't paying attention. So go grab him, because Winston's going to air it out no matter what. And Tillman has very obviously been his favorite target. So go grab him.
That's true. That is really true. Yeah, I have him more as a risky guy. I think it just depends on how your lineup looks. And if you need a flex option that could have potential big upside, like Tillman for me makes sense, but he's also can really just fail you. I think this is a big test. Last couple of weeks had easy cake matchups. This is a tough matchup for the Chargers. This is a matchup that will tell us if Tillman is actually for real or, benefited from good matchups. So, all right, next game here. We're over to the Patriots-Titans here. Biggest question of this game that people probably going to want to know is, do you go back to Calvin Ridley after his fantastic week last week? I have him as a wide receiver 3 flex, but are you going back to Calvin? Oh, I'm not saying you would go. You did it last week, but are you going to Calvin Ridley this week after a great week last week?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I just feel like the Titans receiving core is not good enough that Christian Gonzalez would go anywhere else than Calvin Ridley. So I feel like he might pull the shadow, especially coming off of the week that he had immediately after trading DeAndre Hopkins. And so I feel like it's not only a tough matchup, but just what we've seen out of Calvin Ridley this season, I don't trust, a one big boom week. Obviously, we saw him in week 2 against a good Jets team, and then we saw him this past week against Detroit, even though most of that was after Detroit had dropped 50 on them. So I'm not confident in Calvin Ridley. I don't really trust putting him in your lineup unless you're really trying to take the long shot that he does put up another, 20-plus point week.
That's fair. That is fair there. I mean, I'm kind of indifferent. I like him as a flex. I'm okay with him as a flex this week. I think the target share just going to him is going to be key. As long as they continue to air him out and keep him away from Christian Gonzalez in this matchup, that's kind of what I'm hoping for. I also traded a lot for Calvin Ridley, so I'm really banking on him to kind of revive himself without Hopkins there. So quarterback wise, you're looking at Drake May, maybe playing, maybe not playing. If he does play QB2, if it's Brissett, just at almost every Patriot player possible. Rudolph, Levis, kind of similar. If it's Levis, I probably won't want Calvin Ridley, but if it's Rudolph again, I'm okay with Ridley. Ramondre is a good low end RB2. Antonio Gibson's probably a sit. I have him as an RB4. Tony Pollard is a high RB2, maybe potential RB1 without Tajay Spears, who's banged up and not practicing. Tight ends I'm not really thrilled about. Hunter Henry's the better mid tight end too. Chico Concourse, I'm not playing him. Wide receivers, we already mentioned Calvin Ridley. Looking at DeMar Douglas, Keyshawn Booty, both wide receiver 5s at best. Tyler Boyd's hurt, didn't practice today. Nick Westbrook-Akine, if you're in deeper man leagues and hoping that he just scores a touchdown again for 4 straight weeks, then that's the guy for you this week. So that's how I feel about this. This game is going to be really bad this week. Just bad football coming out of this game here. This game hopefully will be a lot better. Washington Commanders and the New York Giants here. Biggest question of this game here are, do you prefer Tyrone Tracy or Brian Robinson Jr. in this matchup?
I feel like I got to go Brian Robinson Jr. Kid just finds the end zone. Even in, as a mainly RB2 where you have him there, kind of that mid to lower end is where most of his finishes have been. He just has a nose for the end zone, right? He's only hasn't scored, 2 weeks this season. Funny enough, one of them was against the Giants. And so you're trying to get his lick bag on that one. But even in that game without scoring a touchdown, he went 17 for 133 and then pulled 3 targets out of the backfield. So he had the workload. He was obviously efficient, 7.8 yards per carry against the team. You add a touchdown to that, and he's automatically, in a mid RB1 week. And this Giants defense is bad enough that I feel that he could have a better day than Tracy.
That's fair. That is fair. I mean, Tracy is dealing with a concussion right now, so you have to take that into consideration. But we saw the last 2 weeks Saquon and Najee Harris just dominate that Giants run defense there. I mean, Brian Robinson, this is kind of a week for him to kind of bounce back, and I like him to bounce back in this matchup here. Eckler's got RB4, Tyrone Tracy, like I said, they both RB2s, him and Robinson. Singletary's a 4. Quarterbacks, obviously, Jaden Daniels and RB1. Daniel Jones, I don't really know what to do with Daniel Jones, but I mean, the Commander secondary has been much better lately, and Daniel Jones has just continues to be bad. I have him as a QB3. Terry McLaurin, wide receiver 1, Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 1. Noah Brown, that wide receiver 4-5. Wanda Robinson, Darius Slayton, 4 wide receiver 4s. Zach Ertz, mid tight end 2 bust. This is a tough matchup for him. Theo Johnson, I just don't see enough work out of him to trust him in matchups right now. So, all right. New Orleans, Carolina Panthers here, Coach Tyler. Where am I looking to give you a question this game here? Oh, man.
Jonathan Brooks. That's the question I'd be asking.
That is a good question. Let's talk about this Panthers backfield here. How do you feel about this Panthers backfield? And it seems like Jonathan Brooks is trending to playing for his first NFL game here. How do you like this backfield? It's a great matchup, but how do you break down this backfield?
Yeah, I'm going to keep Chuba as the obvious lead back this season, or not this season, this week. Brooks is coming off a major knee injury, tore his ACL in, I want to say it was November of last year, playing at Texas. And Carolina felt good enough about him to go spend a fairly high second round pick on him and make him the first RB out of the draft. but we are looking at Jonathan Brooks as a kid who is 21 years old, about to make his NFL debut. If you told me that just coming into week 1 of a season and Carolina had a back who had produced like Chuba Hubbard had, I still would have said Chuba Hubbard's going to at least start as the guy in front of him. And now you add in that we're 9 weeks into the season and this kid's coming off a torn ACL. I really don't think that this is the week. I know if you've been holding him, especially on your redraft teams, if you've been holding him, you're itching to throw him in your lineup and see him produce something. But
Sure.
This is not the week to do it, right? There's a chance that he doesn't even play this week. They have up until next Wednesday to activate him before he's on IR for the whole season. But we've seen 2 full practices from him. He's still getting his feet under him. You know, he said he was talking to a reporter from the AP, and he said that he is starting to get more confident in that knee, but he's still, he's still learning. It's not back to 1,000%, and he doesn't feel immediately ready to go. And so I'm going to play Hubbard with confidence. I'm going to start Hubbard. I am someone that would much rather have Brooks on my bench and have him explode and be like, oh, man, I played the analytical game and I lost, than be like, oh, my gosh, I've been waiting, 8-9 weeks to put Jonathan Brooks in my lineup. I'm going to put him as my RB1 and then him get
Don't do that.
1 carry for 3 yards. So I'm going to sit Brooks this week. And I say this as a Brooks manager that has him on a lot of dynasty rosters, a couple redraft rosters. I'm sitting him at least this week. If he comes out and he looks fantastic and he can cut and move and do everything that they drafted him to do immediately, I'm happy enough to fall on the sword of I made the right decision in my mind to sit him and not have him go out there and get 1 carry just to see how he feels.
That's fair. I'm kind of in a similar boat, to be honest. I feel the same way. Like with Chuba Hubbard, like I'm okay. He's still a good start for me. I expect him to get the majority of the workload. Brooks, I'm going to sit him. Like I'm not going to trust him in his first NFL game because the target opportunity could be, sure, it could be like 12 carries, but it could be like 3, like you mentioned. It could be like a minimal amount of carries. They're just trying to get his feet wet a little bit. And then next week, they're going to ramp him up a little bit more. Chuba Hubbard's been doing a great job. Why go away from Chuba Hubbard in a matchup where you could possibly win? Let Chuba Hubbard handle the workload like he's been doing this season and ease Brennan and Jonathan Brooks back into your lineup. That's the way I see it. Other running backs in this matchup, like Alvin Kamara is an RB1, Jamal Williams maybe have some RB4. Maybe Kendre Miller has the RB4. I know he's banged up, but one of those backup running backs might have value in a bad Panthers run defense, and it's mostly probably more touchdown dependent. But Alvin Kamara is an RB1. Quarterbacks, I'm not really thrilled for either quarterback. I'm not really trying to start Bryce Young. Derek Carr is potentially like he's on his way back. He's a QB2 in Superflex leagues. Chris Olave is a strong wide receiver 2 this week. But means you sit. Adam Thielen's injured. I don't know if he's playing or not yet. Xavier Legette, wide receiver 4. Jalen Coker, wide receiver 5. Jawan Johnson, Taysom Hill, sleeper tight ends this week. Jontavius Sanders. Obviously, you saw what happened when he had Bryce Young starting. Did not look good. Sitting him back with Tommy Trendle also back for this Panthers tight end core. So, again, this is another game where it's like, oof, I only want to start a handful of players at best there. All right, this one should be this is probably one of the biggest talked about games of the weekend, but Denver Broncos and the Baltimore Ravens here. And for me, the biggest question, where I want to go here, let's talk about the wide receivers in this one here. Mm-hmm. Zay Flowers and Deontay Johnson. We obviously we haven't really mentioned it yet, but Deontay Johnson got traded to the Baltimore Ravens this past week here. Do you expect Deontay Johnson to be startable for us this week? I have him as wide receiver 4, and does he affect the guys around him, Coach Tyler?
I'm going to sit him this week just to see what he looks like. Obviously, he has been on injury report past couple weeks, and he's coming into a new team that has a want and an identity of running the ball. And so it was hard enough to get Zay Flowers all the targets and receptions and yards that he needs, especially when the tight ends actually decide that they want to play. And so I don't think Deontay does too much to disrupt anyone outside of Rashad Bateman, but I'm not going to start him this week, possibly coming back from injury. They may try and throw him out there just because Zay probably pulls a Pat Surtain shadow. And so they might think that if he's healthy and ready to go, that he's worth throwing out there as their wide receiver too. But I just don't necessarily trust him. And I will say he is on the trending down list on Sleeper, which is very interesting for a player of his caliber. But that tells you what the community thinks of him, especially at this point.
That's fair. That is fair. Yeah, I'm kind of like off Deontay Johnson, and at least this week, and I'm probably off from the rest of the season. I don't like this trade for them. I don't see where this trade boosts him to having almost a 25% target share like he's getting in Carolina. That's what Zay Flowers is doing right now. So you're telling me they're not going to go away from Zay Flowers, who's been doing so well this season and has more of a yards after catch ability? Yeah, I don't see that's a big thing. Zay Flowers is, he's dropped a little borderline wide receiver 2. Should be fine in this matchup. But Deontay Johnson is a sit. Wide receiver 4 best. Rashad Bateman's a sit. Cortland Sutton's a high-end wide receiver 3 that probably finishes a high-end wide receiver 2 this week after all said and done. Troy Franklin, Little Jordan Humphrey, wide receiver 5 sleeper potential and a matchup that's fantastic for the pass catchers for the Broncos. Lucas Kroll, sleeper tight end. Ravens been so bad against tight ends this year. Mark Andrews, borderline tight end 1. He's been playing better. Zay Likely, I'm sitting him. He's just kind of fallen off. Running backs, Javonte Williams, RB3. I'd probably sit him if I can in any league possible. Derrick Henry's still the RB1. Justice Hill's a RB3 PPR. Lamar Jackson, Bo Nix. Jackson's a start. If he plays, there's this whole rumor if he hasn't practiced in 2 days, Coach Tyler now. So we might be seeing Josh Johnson playing. I don't know. Bo Nix has upside in this matchup. He's been doing so well the last few weeks now. This one could be a really shitty game or it could be a really fantasy relevant game, but we'll have to wait and see. But quarterbacks should be starting this week if you can. All right, Jacksonville Eagles here now. Where do I want to go for this matchup here? What about the backfield for the Jaguars? Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne's not practicing. Good chance he could miss again this week. Eagles got a good run defense, though. How do you feel about Tank Bigsby this week, Coach Tyler?
Yeah, I don't love Tank Bigsby. There we go. I don't love Tank Bigsby this week. Like you said, this Eagles run defense has been good, and it's very obvious with the lack of receivers that the Jags are projected to have that they're going to have to lean on the run game if they want to even compete here. And so, especially with how minimal the Eagles have scored in the first quarter and really the first half of football games. So there's going to be a lot of running, and he'll get the volume, but I don't know if that volume is going to translate as well as we hope it would. I just don't see the way that Tank puts up anything higher than like a low-end running back 2 week, unless he just really breaks a long one and the Eagles fall asleep on defense.
Yeah, I'm also kind of torn on Tank Bigsby. I have him as a wide receiver, high-end RB3, but it really depends. Like, I feel like if the Jaguars fall behind early, like Bigsby's going to kind of get ran out of this. Even if Travis Etienne doesn't play, like they're going to use Dearness Johnson a lot more. For me, Tank Bigsby is someone I don't really want to go after too much. This is a good question here. Tank Bigsby or Calvin Ridley in your flex this week? It's a good question.
Open up the waivers, buddy. I feel like I gotta go Bigsby just off the fact that he has higher upside to me because he'll have more touches. I don't know what he does with those touches, but I think the volume alone makes me feel more comfortable playing Bigsby over Ridley because there's been.
That's so funny because I'm going to say the exact same thing, but for Calvin Ridley, the target share is there for him. He's going to see at least 8 targets in this game here. You have to hope that eventually one of those targets, a few of those targets will hit for a couple 20-yard catches. I don't know. If it's a full point PPR league, I'm starting Ridley. If it's maybe half, I guess I'll go Bigsby. But any full point PPR, I'm going to pick Ridley over Bigsby in a flex play. Rest of this game here. Trevor Lawrence is a QB3. Brian Thomas Jr. is injured. He may not play. Wide receiver 3 for him, coming off an injury. Jalen Hurts, QB1. Saquon Barkley, RB1. Evan Ingram, low end tight end 1's tough matchup, but the targets are there for him. Dallas Goedert's hurt. He may not play. You have your wide receiver 1, A.J. Brown, your wide receiver 2, Devonta Smith. Parker Washington, the big free agency guy that people have been talking about, wide receiver 4, Gabe Davis, wide receiver 5. He may not play. Brian Thomas Jr. might not play. It could just be Parker Washington as the wide receiver 1, and that's unfortunately not the best thing you could do for this Jaguars offense to have him as your wide receiver 1 at this moment. So, but yeah, this could be a very one-sided game for fantasy. So, all right, next game here: Chicago Bears, Arizona Cardinals. Now, oh man, where do I want to go with this? Rank the top 5 wide receivers you see there, Coach Tyler, for this week. Which wide receivers would you start over who? Because that's really what this one is.
Rank the top 5. All right.
So you have Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Michael Wilson.
I'm going to go Moore, Marvin, Keenan, Rome, Michael Wilson.
Okay.
So kind of how you have it laid out.
Kind of how it is basically laid out that way. So hey, look at me guessing what you're going to do there. Yeah, I mean, Moore and Harrison are 2 wide receiver 2s. Allen's a wide receiver 3. Rome's a 4. Michael Wilson's a 5. You have Cole Kmet, Trey McBride, both tight end 1 still. How about this? DeAndre Swift or James Conner?
I really want to go Connor here, but I feel kind of uneasy about it because the Chicago defense has just been so good. I feel like I got to go Swift just based on matchup. The Chicago defense is good enough that it scares me off of Connor. And Swift has really been on a run lately. His last 4 games.
Been really good the last 4 games.
Yeah, we have a bye in there, but his last 4 games, full PPR leagues. RB3, RB2, RB6, RB11. So, obviously, those were against some softer defenses. And Arizona's obviously not that great of a defense.
They're not.
But
Swift should do well. But,
yeah, I got to go DeAndre Swift there.
There we
almost
go.
solely off matchup.
That's fair. Yeah, I would have said Swift as I have him ranked. He's a high-end RB2. James Conner's just kind of an RB2. Roshan Johnson has low-end RB3 value. Quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, borderline QB1. Caleb Williams. Are you going to go back to Caleb Williams after last week's debacle? If you have him as a starter? Or are you going to go after like Tua or Matthew Stafford this week?
Yeah, I'm going to keep Caleb Williams the starter.
Okay.
We got to remember that this is a 22-year-old rookie, right? He's going to make mistakes. He's going to have bad games. It happens. So I'm going to go back to him because if you want to play the recency bias game with Caleb Williams, he had a bad week last week. You go back a week ago or a week before that was the bye. And then the week before that, he was the quarterback 1. Yeah. So there's going to be highs. There's going to be lows. It's just the fun of a rookie quarterback. But like I said, Arizona's defense, it isn't all that much to get riled up over. And so I feel confident in Caleb Williams coming back and being the guy again.
All right. I don't hate it. All right. Hopefully will be the biggest game of the weekend. Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers here. Ooh, where do I want to go with this? Whew, man, this is tough. Do you start Jordan Love or Josh or Jared Goff? Between the 2.
I'm going to start Love just solely off the analytical mindset of, assuming Love is fully healthy and plays. I'm going to start Love just off the analytical mindset that Jared Goff can't play well outside.
It's his first game of the season, week 9, playing outside this year. Fun fact.
Yeah, the Lions, whoever was working the schedule for them, really made it. There's a reason the Lions have been winning so well, and it's because they've been playing indoors everywhere. But I saw a stat somewhere saying that over, I want to say it's his career, it may be the past year or two, Jared Goff indoors averages around 19 plus fantasy points a week. And outdoors, he averages around 12 to 13 fantasy points a week.
Yuck.
So if we're going solely off that, if Love is fully healthy, I'm going to go Love here. It's almost like the primetime Kirk Cousins argument, except he played in primetime and threw for 500 plus yards. So
he's good at primetime now. Kurt loves primetime now.
He figured it out in Atlanta. But Jared Goff, same situation, same place. I'm going to play the same game and go Love.
All right. I like it. Running backs, Montgomery, RB2, high-end RB2, Gibbs, RB1, Josh Jacobs, low-end RB2, Amon St. Brown, wide receiver 1 still. You got to trust the kid. Khalif Raymond, wide receiver 5. All those wide receivers in Green Bay, Jaden Reed, the best, Romeo Doubs, 3rd, Christian Watson's RB4, Dontamian Wicks, RB4. Laporta's a tight end 1. Tucker Kraft is a tough game, but if Love plays, he's a tight end, high end tight end 2, tight end low end tight end 1 kind of player. So, all right, over to the next game, Rams Seahawks here. Oh man, where am I going on this game here? Are you fine? Are JSN and Tyler Lockett locks as starters with or without Metcalf there?
I go back and forth on this. Let me pull them up real quick.
Yeah, you look at that, and I'll name off some of the other things here. If you're looking at the running backs this week, Kerryon Williams, RB1, Ken Walker, RB1, Zach Charbonnet is at RB3, Kobe Parkinson at tight end, sleeper tight end 2, Noah Fant, high end tight end 2. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
All right, then let's talk about the wide receivers now. JSN and Tyler Lockett. How do you feel about them with and without Metcalf?
Yeah. I wanted to make sure that I had all my stats right. With no Metcalf, I feel a little bit more confident playing Tyler Lockett. Obviously, started the season a little hotter than he's been playing the past couple weeks, especially with his target share. But I think JSN is a start either way. I like where you have him at wide receiver 3. He's just been getting the targets. He's finally working his way into that point of being the wide receiver 2, kind of taking that spot from Tyler Lockett. The past 3 weeks, we see 9, 6, and 7 targets. And before that, we've got 3 with the terrible Miami game. Everyone thought he fell off, and then he comes back with 12 and 7. So he's getting open. Seattle's been using him the way that they need to. And so he's able to actually play his game to the best of his ability. And so I like just the target share of JSN to keep him enough as a starter with or without Metcalf. But that Metcalf designation really has to be what moves the needle for me on Tyler Lockett sitting on my bench or possibly being in my flex spot.
That's fair. It's actually funny because I feel the opposite in terms of Lockett. I feel like having Metcalf on the field helps Tyler Lockett get more open downfield because everyone's so focused on Metcalf. While JSN, I feel like, actually does better without Metcalf on the field, which is why I like JSN this week if Metcalf's out, because I think it's a good matchup for him. Lockett, I'm a little torn on personally. But, other wide receivers in this game, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, wide receiver 1s. They're back, full action. You have to start these guys. DeMarcus Robinson's at upside wide receiver 4 now that he's back in his more natural spot. Matthew Stafford, man, he's climbing up rankings, but I have him back as a QB1. Gino's more of a mid QB2, better for superflex leagues. But this is another good game here that should be fun to watch in the afternoon slate. So, all right, now we're at Sunday Night Football. Indianapolis Colts and Minnesota Vikings here. Oh man, where do we go here? Oh man, are you starting both Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs?
I'm for sure starting Josh Downs. I feel like I'm going to start Michael Pittman Jr. Obviously, we have Joe Flacco starting, and Pittman was really a lower-end wide receiver 2 with Joe Flacco. The 3 weeks he was out there starting, we've got wide receiver 20, 23, and 28 finishes. So I think that he's a lot more valuable of a fantasy player with Joe Flacco starting, as well as is really all of the Colts offense, not named Anthony Richardson. I feel more confident starting Downs than I do Pittman in terms of upside, in terms of he's just been that guy for them. He had 2 wide receiver 1 weeks, if I'm remembering correctly, with Joe Flacco earlier this season. I like Downs more, but I feel confident enough in Pittman to either be that low-end wide receiver 2 or higher-end wide receiver 3 if he doesn't immediately match the production that he put up a few weeks ago with Joe Flacco.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, again, I'm high on Downs. That he is dealing with some injuries at practice, though, so keep that in mind. But I'm fine with Pittman. I like him as a flex. I think that this matchup will be good for him. You know, we saw Minnesota just kind of not do well in the secondary this past week here, allowing the Rams just kind of throw all over them. Joe Flacco is going to throw the ball plenty in this game. I like them. It's a little hard to want to go after like Alec Pierce or A.D. Mitchell right now because target share might not be there for either one of them. But Downs and Pittman, I'm really high on. You know, Justin Jefferson's wide receiver 1, Jordan Addison wide receiver 3, Jalen Naylor wide receiver 5. Mo Alley Cox kind of turns back into a sleeper tight end for me. He was doing well under Joe Flacco. T.J. Hawkinson, Coach Tyler, are you starting to forget T.J. Hawkinson this week?
I'm not going to start Hawkinson yet.
Okay.
If you have listened to the show really since I've been on, I like to play it safe with injuries. Really guys coming off of injuries, and kind of like I talked about with Brooks. This is a major, torn ACL. If he comes out and has a amazing week, I feel more confident that I'll feel okay seeing him put up, 20 points on my bench and being like, oh man, I obviously could have used that. I missed out. Than having him come in and get 1 target for 0 receptions and be like, why would I start him in his first week back unless I was extremely desperate? So I'm going to sit him this week. If he comes back and he's vintage TJ Hawkinson, I'm very excited to start him next week. But also if they're easing him back, if he's getting the feel for the game again, I'm very okay taking that loss this week with the fact of the peace of mind going forward that he's healthy.
That's fair. That's fair. I kind of see it. If it was last Thursday we were talking, I would have been like, nah, just sit him. Like I wouldn't start him. But the fact that they told us like last Thursday, like, no, he's playing in week 10. He's playing week 10. It makes me feel like that he is a little bit more trustworthy in terms of that sense that they're like, no, like he's playing next week. Like he's good to go. So I'm kind of okay trusting him as long as you don't have one of the top 8 tight ends that's not considered TJ Hawkinson at this moment here, then I'm okay giving him the shot because at this point, what's the difference at tight end this right now? That's kind of how I feel at it. Like, yeah, maybe he fails and maybe that's my fault and you're Coach Tyler and don't sit him. Do sit him and then you're happy at that point. But I think I'm okay to risk it. Like I'm starting him over like I'm trying to think who even I can even think Noah Fant, maybe Mark Andrews. Like I'm considering it. Some players like that. Speaking of the other guys here, let's go to the RBs. Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, high-end RB2, RB1 for Jones. Joe Flacco was a high-end QB2. Sam Donald's a QB1. Again, good matchup. This should be a good Sunday night football game. Should be very back and forth, which is going to be hopefully really exciting for football. So, and then we are clear at the Monday night football game. Buccaneers, Kansas City Chiefs here. Oh man, I'm trying to think where to go here. Let me get some of the easy ones out of the way. Baker, Pat Mahomes, both QB1s this week. Cade Otton, Travis Kelce, both tight end ones this week here. How about the running backs, Coach Tyler? Let's say, do you want to start one of the Bucks or Kareem Hunt?
I'm going to start Kareem Hunt over the Bucks.
Okay.
Just that backfield has been cloudy. And, they're going back and forth with touches. There's injury.
So many targets, though.
Yeah. But also this Kansas City Chiefs defense is very good. I think I saw they've allowed 2 rushing touchdowns this entire season.
Yuck.
They're going to be good against the run game. And I just feel more confident in Kareem Hunt. He hasn't had below a very he was RB28 in his first week playing. That was his lowest finish. And then we see RB5, RB11, last week RB23. I feel super confident in that. In obviously, the past 3 games that he's played since he really took over the role, we have at least 21 carries in each of those games. He hasn't been uber efficient, but when you're touching the ball that much, it doesn't really matter because he scored in all 3 of those games, had at least 59 rushing yards, has at least 1 target out of the backfield. I just feel confident enough in the fact that he is going to go out there, and I know that he's going to touch the ball at least 20 times. And what he does with that, as long as he ends up in the end zone once and gets a decent chunk of yards, I'm perfectly happy with it. So I'll take Hunt over either of the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Hunt is the save option because you know what he's going to give you 50 and a touchdown. White has really stepped up with the last 2 weeks, the last 2 game and a half now. It kind of intrigues me in the passing game. If he's going to get another 7-8 target game, I'm kind of happy about that in PPR leagues to kind of consider him starting over Kareem Hunt because they're acting like this backfield is their wide receiver core right now with Cade Otton, and I'm here for it. So I mean, I get it though, but Hunt's the safer option. White's I think has more upside personally, but I think Hunt is the safer option. Wide receivers, I mean, the Bucks wide receivers, we really didn't see anything after 1 game. Everything was much of a disappointment. Like Jalen McMillan was disappointing in terms of his production that he showed, but Sterling Shepard was too. Trey Palmer, they're all wide receiver 4s because I think any one of them could really break off. I'm hoping it's still McMillan because he's the young guy. Hopefully, will take over this offense at some point. On the other side, like DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver 3, Xavier Worthy, wide receiver 3. I really want to see what happens when Juju comes back in the game. He's injured. I don't know if he's playing this week or not, but if they're all playing, I think it lowers all their values. And I'm hoping that Juju goes back to that slot role. We'll have to see how it goes this week here. I'm not really thrilled to want to start a lot of these, but none of the wide receivers really throw me. It's the running backs and the tight ends who I really want to go after and play in this week's matchup. But the wide receivers, I think you're going to start one of them in the flex spot and hope for the best. That's the way I kind of see them for any of these wide receivers this week. So unless Juju starts and they're saying he's healthy, which I don't think they're going to say that anyway this week. So yeah, that's really it though. This hopefully is a good matchup on Monday Night Football. So, but that is going to wrap up our show tonight, guys. It's a lot of fun. We actually got it done within the hour. I'm loving that here. Coach Tyler, is there anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, go check out Dynasty Nerds. We talk about it every show. Me and Coach Steve, that's actually where we met, writing for them. Coach Steve does a ton in season, does a ton out of season. He just does a ton for them. And I do a lot more focused on that Devy and during draft time. But go over to dynastynerds.com, use code COACH, get access to the Dynasty GM, gives you values for your players, actually gives you trade finders for every league and every user that is uploaded for the Dynasty GM. So you can look at values of guys as we're getting closer to trade deadlines in your fantasy leagues. You can also just look at how much better your teams are set up for the future than your league mates are. But you can also use that to get into our Dynasty film room. Go check it out. That's where I spend a lot of my time watching all those 2025s, 26s. If you haven't seen any Jeremiah Smith, go check it out with the 2027s. Absolute dog receivers. Start stockpiling those picks. But yeah, go over to Dynasty Nerds. Use code COACH. And thank y'all for checking us out.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And we appreciate you tuning into the Fantasy Coaches as always, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this show. Hopefully you like the new format. And if you guys want to see something else, let me know. I'm more than happy to kind of mix things up a little bit here. Not, set in stone on my spreadsheet, my slideshows. So just trying to help you guys win some championships by giving you guys the most practical information possible with giving you guys, legit advice to help you guys out here. If you're listening on a YouTube channel, please subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have some more subscribers, trying to help build up this base here to give you guys more opportunities and more information as much as possible here. Obviously, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you guys as well here. Please help us out. Leave a 5-star review. Leave some comments. We'd really appreciate it. Join our TikTok. It's a Fantasy Coaches. I post things on there as well sometimes when I can and figure it out because I'm a young old man. So as much as I can figure that out, but we appreciate you guys for listening in. As always, good luck on your week 9, guys. We'll see you going into week 10 for our waiver wire show on Monday night. So thank you guys all for listening. Tune in until next time, everyone, and y'all have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark hands. I've been feeling super